Uh, of course, the tableau appeared much before, but what I'm talking about, is the tableau in the modern period. And what is this situation of modern art? I mean, there is something very circular there. The situation of modern art is coming from photography. And photography becoming a tableau is the expression of this situation of modern art. So you see there is something very circular. The situation of modern art is defined by photography, with photography. Why? Because it is precisely between arts, the fine arts and the media. This is the very situation of modern art, and this is the situation of photography. It's why modern art was invented with photography. I mentioned Richter and Wall because precisely both of them reproduced this situation. They made this situation visible within the picture and using the tableau as a form and using photography as a model for Richter, and even more, as I said, or directly with Jeff Wall as a pictorial medium. A few words about the distinction between the tableau and the picture. The two words are not synonymous. The tableau is a form. It's a form. When it assumes this form, the pictorial work, the picture, affirms its status as an autonomous image. The tableau is movable. It is not fixed to one single place. It constitutes its own place. It doesn't depend upon architecture, in contrast to the fresco. It doesn't share its support with text, in contrast to the image of an illustration. The tableau is movable, but it is not, and that's a very important point, especially if you consider photography. The tableau is movable, but it's not intended to be handled and manipulated. That makes its difference with the drawing and the print. The tableau presents itself at the end, and this is a key point, as a frontal plane with clear borders. Its frontal nature means that the viewer is confronted by the tableau, stands opposite. The tableau sets up an implicit relationship between the viewer and the image, and the image of its own body. The tableau has a lot to do with the image of the body. That's something, unfortunately, I cannot develop today. And because also it has to do with the image of the body, it has to do with the nature of the subject. The tableau was not, in its early forms, the tableau was not in its early form in the Renaissance. The tableau was part of a process which constituted the modern subject, the first modern subject. Because of that confrontation, because of that relation with the image of the body. So we can say that it is an historical form. We can also say, and it's something which should be debated, an anthropological form. An historical and anthropological form in the sense that it establishes the vertical stature of the human body within the domain of artistic representation or artistic depiction. But in contrast to the freestanding sculpture, It is incapable of being the three-dimensional projection. It is incapable of being the double of the viewer. The two-dimensionality of the image and the fixing of its boundaries produce another space, fictitious in nature. This fictitious space is analogous to the view, but this view is internalized. A tableau is not a way of seeing, but a way of being into the world, standing in front of it. And it is a way of dealing with the view as the view is precisely in front of. But it is a way of dealing with the view as it is in front of, inside the view. I hope I will have time to come back to this last remark because it's supposed to be the end of my talk. But maybe I will not have time. The term picture involves the idea of a concrete image, an image which has been elaborated, manufactured. The distinction between image and picture is precious. It doesn't exist in French. And I must say that Tableau is missing in English, but the distinction between image and picture is very interesting, and I use it a lot, I must say. And it doesn't exist in French. The picture is the ground of the pictorial, which extends much beyond the limits of the picture per se, and also beyond the context of the fine arts. I mean, when you talk of picture, you don't think 1 second about the tradition of fine arts. It's not about the tradition of fine arts. Tableau, yes, that's a major distinction. But the idea of Tableau comes from the specific culture of the fine arts. The specific culture of the fine arts, which is now confronted, I don't know if it's a good word, with the media. It should be recalled that for the French art critics in 19th century, Baudelaire, notably, the tableau was, as it was recalled by Michael Fried, was the aim and the result of a process of composition. Tableau has to do with composition. So, when it became problematic, it's because composition became problematic. As such, as a form of composition, it was considered as superior to the sketch, superior to the study. It was even, as we were reminded by Michael Fried, it was even a criterion to evaluate the pictorial works produced in any medium, not only painting, in any medium. After the appearance and intrusion of photography in the institutional field of art, the tableau, as an achieved composition, was reinforced in its central position in the Beaux-Arts system. And it's why there is such an obsessive use of the idea of tableau, as Michael Fried said, precisely because of photography. It's not so difficult to understand. The tableau was the best way to keep photography at a distance. The photographers, and we have the proof of it, the photographers who craved acceptance in the world of art, who were doing their best to be accepted in this very seclusive field of art. What did they do? They presented their works as studies, systematically. Not as tableau, because they knew that they could not be accepted as artists making tableau. So they were saying, no, we do studies. So in a way, they were trying to enter the system, as we say in French, par la petite porte. The small door in the background. No, by the bottom, not by the large door, by the top, by the bottom. So you see, that's exactly what was going on. And if you didn't do it, please read the Salon of Baudelaire of 1859 or reread it. This is a wonderful text. I think the most important text of art criticism in 19th century. This is the famous text where you have le public moderne et la photographie. You know this text, the modern public and photography. In this very salon, the salon is a text about the salon, published as a booklet. They were published in magazines or even sometimes as booklets. So in this salon, Baudelaire is very clear. Look at that. He's talking about Rousseau. And it's very clear. For him, Rousseau is presenting studies as composition, and he takes a simple study for composition. That's a mistake, the big mistake. And this mistake is coming from the influence of photography. That's the point. And he says, what is the problem with Mr. Rousseau? His problem is that he doesn't construct. Is, composition, construction. So this idea of composition was a bad construction. A work was bad when it was made of pieces, not built up, not constructed. When the composition was, you see, it's as simple as that. It is significant that the first attempts at a photographical tableau, the first people who tried to make photographs as tableau were about composition, but in the theatrical way, the way of the tableau vivant. I mean, it's very famous, I will not insist, but look at these two examples of Henry Peach Robinson. They're quite distant, 30 years in between. And you see, everything is so clear. I don't have, I think, to comment. But you realize that the photograph on the right, 30 years before the one on the left, was made from a drawing. There was a drawing first, before the photograph. So you imagine the photograph was made as a painting. There was a sketch, a study, and then you had the composition of the photograph as a tableau. But this tableau has nothing to do with the tableau as we understand it from Richter, or it has maybe a little to do with Jeffol, but very little with Richter. Because there is this theatrical tradition behind of the tableau vivant. For a long time, the English use of the word tableau was limited to this idea of a stage arrangement of living characters as figures, or by extension of some simulacra, three-dimensional image of such an arrangement, which is the tableau vivant. And you have here a work by Kinnors called The Weight, 1964-1965, which was precisely presented by Kinnors, which was, I think, at that time a very interesting artist, which was presented as a tableau. And that was the word he used. But not tableau as a tableau form, tableau as a tableau vivant, stage. To put it simply, but it's something which has to be considered, these two meanings of the tableau. To put it simply, I will say that two things. First, this idea of the tableau vivant. It's très compliqué, excuse me. But I will put it very simply. It should be a lecture in itself. I mean, what the story of it. But, voilà, this is a moment, a very interesting moment of this story. It is Varallo, the Sacromonte of Varallo. It's one example of the 45 chapels in Varallo, which are about the Passion of the Christ, of the Christ, yes. And an interesting point for us here in London is that Samuel Butler, the great novelist, did work on these works. He was very interested in them, and he photographed them. He went them. He studied the painters. I mean, it's a very interesting point. Anyway, so but that's a good example. I'll just show you a few images. So these are the kind of chapels on the left where you find inside these three-dimensional compositions with the paintings behind. And here, that's very interesting because you see Samuel Butler. He got into the picture. You cannot do it with Richter or Jeffrey. Huh? Try. It's impossible. You could physically get into it. And it's what he did. You see, now you cannot anymore. But at the time, you could, which says a lot. This is why it is theatrical. Because let's be serious. Theater is about that possibility of getting into the composition. No, that's something else. So, but, of course, during the 20th century, with the development of abstract painting, the link between the tableau and the composition received a new impetus, sometimes on the very side of religious culture. It verged even on mystics. After all, what is Duchamp large glass? It's a kind of pseudo-devotional composition with a big C. And one of the best expressions of this mystical investment of the tableau or composition, of the tableau as a composition, was given by Kandinsky in his autobiographical piece, Rückblicke, Reminiscences, published in Berlin in 1913. You know, I mean, everybody knows the story about the hallucinatory vision of a haystack by Monet. But the Russian version of the text presents this indication. You have it on the screen. You see, he said, one word, composition, resounded in my ears like a prayer. That's very strong. So, of course, beyond there are many things. There are, I mean, a lot of, we could discuss endlessly about the references behind. But it's also very clearly about an act of devotion. You have even this description where what you see here, you see that this expression of mystic fervor is mixed up with a medical and psychiatric terms. And this is absolutely typical of the 20th century discourse on the psychic content of abstract art. And of course, such a mixture transformed the tableau, transformed the idea of the tableau. So the tableau Kandinsky is speaking about is the tableau coming from that experience. You see, once more, we are also in between the mystics and the psychiatric. 40 years before Greenberg's All Over, a Polish artist, Władysław Chemiński, a pupil of Malevich, had given the most extreme definition of the tableau as a unified plane. In his idea, a tableau had to be a pure rectangular surface covered of paint, perfectly self-contained. This quality, which he called unism, could be attained by suppressing any dramatic contrast as well as any dynamic structure. Excuse me. With this last refusal, the refusal of the dynamic structure, Chemiński was neatly differentiating himself from Malevich and Russian Cubo-futurism. You see here on the screen an example of this unistic composition, and they are called composition, unistic composition number 9. The most interesting point in that post-suprematist idea of the tableau is the affirmation of a unified, de-dramatized space for the gaze. De-dramatized. It's a little bit different, this idea, from the idea of anti-theatrical, or the anti-theatrical. The unistic composition was supposed to produce a pure visual place out of time, since it would be relieved from the dramatic play of forces in conflict inside the rectangle. So it was about suppressing the conflict of forces, which was, for Chemiński, the principle of the Baroque, and he was trying to reject this tradition, this Baroque tradition. Thus, the unistic composition was the ultimate alternative to the endless Baroque tradition, with its reliance on the dramatic and expressionistic strength, energy, pathos, etc., of time-oriented art. This idea of the pictorial place, the tableau, as the achievement of a pure visual space, even place, is, I think, very beautiful. And it fits with the definition of the tableau given by Jacques Lacan when he credits it of a function or effect of pacification by calming down, appeasing the appetite, I quote, of the eye. I quote again, the eye full of voracity. That is the evil eye. For Lacan, and that's a key point never properly understood, the tableau cannot satisfy, cannot fulfill the voracious eye. The painter should not even try to do that. It is, he says Lacan, where expressionism fails. The expressionist thinks that he can fulfill, he can satisfy the voracious eye. No, the voracious eye cannot be satisfied. He will never be satisfied. You can just appease his voracity. It has a lot to do with death, of course. The tableau, Lacan says, is a charm. It is, I quote, taming, civilizing, enchanting. And I quote it in French because it's beautiful. Le ressort apaisant, civilisateur et charmeur de la fonction du tableau. Hein? Voilà, that's the point. That's what Cheminsky is about. That's what this idea of the tableau, when it functions against the Baroque, against expressionism, against the contrast, the conflict of forces is about. Few years ago, I tried to show that this very function of the tableau operates in Jeffords' work, especially in Man with a Rifle.